What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about the DualSense controller, the new wireless game controller for the PlayStation 5. Now, I'm recording this about 5 minutes after Sony officially unveiled it, did the blog post. We'll be going over some of the stuff that they say in the blog post, some of the more interesting things, and generally just going over my analysis, my thoughts, my impressions on this new controller. Now, obviously, you guys are seeing it a little bit later, and I do apologize for that. We ran out of videos that we could do for yesterday, so I wanted to get this to you as early as I could today. Now, some of the biggest things to note about this controller, and even the blog has kind of confirmed it, are the leaks that were talking about it for weeks and for months before, Sony officially came out with it. And one of the things is the whole feeling, and they even talk about it. The feel of this controller is a really, really big thing in terms of being able to sense things. So when you're even pulling the L2, R2, even you can compare it to like feeling if you're pulling back a bow. And so things like that, driving through mud they talked about. So it seems like, those peripheral things that we had heard where it's going to like measure your sweat to be able to do like the horror kind of experiences, but just generally you're going to feel more things coming through the controller. Seems like it is all true. In terms of how it looks, they've moved stuff around very, very slightly, but they have done it. In terms of the share button, they've removed it, although it's still technically there, right? The create button, they say, is pretty much the same thing, only kind of enhanced from it. One of the main things I really love about this controller is how they talked about the audio, where you could talk to people in a party chat without having to plug in a mic. How literally the controller is its own microphone. Now, that's for like kind of, if you're in the moment with something. If you do want to have like a long discussion, you want like the best audio experience, you're going to want a mic overall. The colors, obviously, the colors are very, very different. We're not really used to seeing, and they even talked about it, right? We're not used to seeing a controller that's got two different color palettes to them. The light bar being changed, obviously. How you can see it like kind of in the cracks in the front of the controller. Look, if we're going over how I feel about it, which it actually is what this video is about, I'll tell you this. I love it. I actually really, really love it. I think the colors and how it looks stands out. It pops out at you. I can see how it may, and by the way, so again, I'm recording this right after it comes out. I have seen no impression. So this is literally just my own opinion. I have no idea if other people like or hate this thing, so I'm just going to kind of go off on my own thing. I will maybe predict that I could see if people don't like it because it does look kind of different from what we're used to. I know Sony talked about how they want to make it as light as possible, how they didn't want to like really, like heavy it up, right, with weight. How they wanted to, it looks big, but it's actually pretty small. Like we all know that the PlayStation controllers in general are a whole lot smaller than the Xbox controllers. And again, you either like or don't like that thing. I'm not saying it to like argue it, but even Sony has said like we still want it to be that. Obviously, it looks a little bit bigger, but we want it to. In general, it's gonna fit a lot of your hand sizes. They said that they tested it with a lot of different people. So like I can see how you maybe don't like this, but you know what? Looking at it, I love it. I think it looks really, really cool. Again, it really pops out at you. The white and black, I think work really well. I want to get the elephant out of the room though, because I think a lot of people, or I want to address the elephant. I will kick the elephant out of the room once I'm done with this, but I do think a lot of people are going to say this again. I don't know if they already have. But again, to address it, this looks like the Xbox controller, okay? It doesn't look exactly like the Xbox controller, but if you don't think that they have looked at that, then you're kidding yourself. Now, I say that as a positive thing. I own all three consoles. I'm like Switch, Xbox, PlayStation. I primarily, I'm a PlayStation gamer for life. I'm going to be getting the PS5. But I respect the other consoles a ton. And one thing I have always respected is the Xbox controller is pretty darn good. And there's no doubt about it that Sony has looked to the Xbox controller for, well, we do our own really cool things here, but what can we kind of take that they do so well and use it here? Obviously, like the actual like L2, R2 in terms of Xbox's LTRT, those two, like you can tell that Sony has kind of adapted to kind of fit more Microsoft's thing. Now, again, Sony has always been a pioneer. It's in its own way. The whole light bar thing, that was very, very different. The touch screen or like the touchpad in the middle, that was very different. The share button, like that was pretty darn cool and that was unique. So they've had their own stuff. I'm not saying like, oh, they've run out of ideas or they're just copying it. I think this is is a good thing because I think it still holds what we all like about the PlayStation controller. I think it still has all of that stuff. So if you like the PS4 controller, which by the way, I love the PS4 controller. I think it's it's my favorite controller I've ever used. Again, maybe that's just one man's opinion, literally. But I really liked it. So I think this has all of the features that one has that we'd be looking for. But you know what? It also has new stuff. It also is trying to do some new things. And again, even the new features that seems pretty exclusive to PlayStation's controller, they seem pretty cool. And again, I think the changes, they even said like it's very subtle changes of like the analog sticks of the actual like L2, R2, L1, R1. The changes of that, they say, are very, very small. But again, I feel like that's because like, yeah, we're trying to get it a little bit like how Microsoft does it, but we don't want to go too far. And again, they're both distinct. They're both different. People like, each of them for their own reasons. So I think it's completely okay that they're doing something a little, because I feel like, again, the PlayStation community, okay, we're all very passionate. We're all a very passionate group of people, and I like that. I love that, actually. But I think, people are going to get a little too hard about this kind of stuff by talking like, hey, this is too far, or they're copying, or why are you doing that? Or then like Microsoft people would say, you are copying, stuff like that. I really just don't think it's necessary. It is unique in its own ways. It's got its own stuff, but it looks a little bit more like the Xbox controller. Man, guys, when I'm recording this, I'm just staring at that first picture. One of the main things I love is two things. I like the D-pad and I like the four shapes. I think they actually work. Any of the kind of things that kind of like stick out in the white, I think really like adds something to it. Like the D-pad's got like the darker black, like it really seems like the D-pad is sticking out. Now obviously the D-pad always sticks out, that's literally how it works, but I just feel like it's got some extra emphasis because it's contrasted, the black to the white. And same thing with the shapes, it doesn't look like it's as black as the kind of outskirts of the D-pad, but I think the shapes blend in a little bit more, but you can still distinctly see each of the shapes. Man, I'm literally staring at it. I've stared at it this entire time for the 7 minutes. I'm really impressed. I really, really am. Here's the deal, though. I don't think many people thought this is what it was going to look like. I really don't. I think a lot of people, I guess myself included, I thought it was going to look a little bit more like the PS4 controller. But maybe we shouldn't have, because this isn't all that surprising, because we know, again, there's been a lot of different, ideas of what this controller could look like. And even Sony said, they've gone through like over 100 mock-ups of what this could look like. They picked from like 100 different designs, and this is what they settled on. And, honestly, you just got to kind of trust them. Maybe that sounds kind of hypocritical from like a big billion-dollar corporation, but they've tested it. They've even said like they've had different gamers use this thing. I'm sure it'll come out over the next couple of weeks and months. And even when we see the PS5, itself, we'll hear a lot about like, hey, yeah, people have touched it, people have played it. Like, we haven't just made this thing. So again, I'm really, really impressed. This is not what I was expecting to see on Twitter at 1:02 p.m. on a Tuesday. I really just the weirdest, even dumbest time to do it. But you know what? It works so well. It looks really, really cool. There's other pictures, obviously, of kind of it zooming in and looking at other things. Obviously, it's got like the charger, how you could hook it up to the PS5 as well. They said like they want to try and have the same kind of battery, or they want, the battery life of the PS4's controller lasts a pretty good time, and you can dim the lighting of the light bar to help it to actually make it last longer. I don't know how you're going to necessarily do that here, because the light doesn't stick out anymore. It's not like it's literally illuminating from your control. I mean, it is. It's just actually doing it from a different direction. So I wonder if again, they said like they're conscious of it. They want the lifespan to be as long as it can. But I'm interested to see, because of the dimming, basically, because I don't think there's going to be as much light on this one as there was the PS4. I wonder if this one, the DualSense, will actually last longer than the PS4 controller. All things we'll have to see. Can't wait to see somebody put their hand around it. I want to see, like, I don't even know, like the next Uncharted or God of War 2 or Spider-Man 2 or Horizon 2. I want to see these things on the controller. Again, I think obviously people are going to go to visuals first, and I think that's kind of normal, but the whole sensing thing and that the controller feels, right, it's going to have a different feel to it. I'm very excited for how that actually works in games, how games take advantage of it. Some games may take advantage way more than others. Some maybe won't take advantage of it at all, which is what we saw also with the PS4 controller. So it is a risk reward, because you're making all these new abilities that could be done on this DualSense, and you did it on the PS4 controller. the DualShock 4, but also at the same time, is everybody going to use it? And that's always kind of the push-pull that you're facing in the gaming industry. But guys, I'm impressed. I love it. Let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you think about the features of it? All that kind of stuff. Let me know. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel podcast now. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. And thank you so much for watching. We cover the PlayStation 5, all things PlayStation 5 on this channel as often as we can. So if you guys like that kind of stuff, you found the right place. Again, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.